Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So it's that time again. It's been a year since I last did an update on my giant worm bin. So I think it's time I did an update on my worm bin and show you what my worm bin's producing at the moment and how much compost I'm going to get out of it. Keep watching and I'll show you how much compost I'm going to get out of it. So here's my worm bin. It's made out of a IBC tote. I've had a little tamper around with it earlier, and here's what my compost is looking like. So I'm going to start sifting this off, and I'm going to see how much compost I get out of it. I think it's time to give it a good clean and get it made over for the next year as well. Look, there's loads of worms just on the top sitting about. If I lift that up, let's see if we can see some worms. They've moved under because I've been messing about with it, so let's start sifting it and see how much compost we get. So you can see the amount of worms in here. Now what I'm doing with these worms as I'm sifting is I'm putting them into a separate bucket that I'm putting all the stuff that I'm sifting off, and that's going to be forming the foundation layer of my next round of compost. So when I set this compost bin back up after I've given it this clean and harvested my vermicompost, I'm going to add this back to the bottom of the compost pile, and this is going to be my foundation layer because it's going to be full of worm eggs, and it's going to be full of worm eggs, it's going to be full of baby worms and big worms as well. This is the vermicompost that I'm harvesting so far. I've got loads of worms in here. I mean, there's a lot of red wrigglers, but there's a lot of pot worms in here. They're those little white worms. Now, pot worms generally appear in your worm bins when the conditions aren't perfect for red wrigglers. Now, they're not a massive cause for alarm because they themselves they'll help break down the material that you've got in your compost pile, but they are a warning sign to say if you don't let your worm bin dry off a little bit, then you will make your red wrigglers and your other composting worms suffer, because these pot worms generally appear when the compost pile is too wet or the conditions aren't, in terms of pH, aren't exactly right. So this is one of the good things that's going to happen as of sifting this, is we'll set this worm bin back up. It'll be in a better condition for the red wrigglers than it would be if I just left it. So I've just about sifted 1/3 of the vermicompost, and I've come to the bottom layer, and now it's just crawling with baby worms. It's absolutely full of baby worms. So I'm not going to sift that bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull that to one side, and I'm going to add that as the top layer when I start filling this compost bin back up, because I don't want to lose those baby worms. They need to do a lot of work for me going forward. So from that 1/3 of the compost bin, I've managed to sift a nice wheelbarrow load of vermicompost. So we're going to store that in our greenhouse. I'm just going to use these grocery trays. The good thing about these grocery trays is that they're stackable, so you can pull these handles over and you can add another one to, stack another one on top, so you can keep stacking them so it doesn't take as much ground space. So I've just started raking it all forward so I can get easier access to it. I found this lump of paper, and look at that. Look how lovely that is. Just absolutely full of worms. Gorgeous. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Loads and loads of worms. So I'm going to wrap that up, and I'm going to just store it in my bucket to add again to my next compost pile. Now these are the piles that haven't quite broken down. There's still lumps of fresh manure in here. There's still quite lumpy bits of wood. So I'm going to add that back to the next pile. If I was just going to spread it on my beds, that'd be no problem. It'd be absolutely fine just to take out and spread on the beds. Because I'm not going to use this for my beds, and I'm going to use it for my potting mixers and my planting seed starts for next year. That's why I'm sifting it and going through this tedious process. It's going to be like rocket fuel. It's going to be absolutely beautiful stuff. So I'm getting to the bottom of the compost pile now. I've taken 2 wheelbarrow loads out, and it's starting to get really difficult to sift. It's very wet, so I'm going to give up on sifting it. I'll show you how much I've sifted off. So the amount that I've got sifted off is 2 of those trays, and there's another half tray outside. and it's getting quite difficult to sift now, so I'm going to give up on sifting it. It's getting a bit tedious. So what I'm going to do is, I've got this I've got this big bucket that I grew my gourds in. So I'm going to bring the material from the compost pile and I'm going to bring it in and put it into this bucket for the rest of winter, and then come in a couple of months I'll be able to sift it off a lot easier because it'll be a lot drier, and the worms will have gone through the last little bits that they need to go through. And I'll start filling the big compost bin up as well with lots of fresh material throughout the winter, so that can compost down and the worms can keep working for me. So I brought one wheelbarrow load of the rough stuff, and I'll show you that it's nearly filled my whole bucket. So I'm going to bring the rest of it, and I don't think I'm going to have enough space in this bucket to store it all in. So I'm going to have to find something to store it in. It might just be more of those trays that I stack it in. Yeah, I think it's just going to be more of those trays that I stack it in. I think that's going to be the best thing to do. Looking like after one wheelbarrow load, there's about another wheelbarrow load left. I'll go and fetch that over. So that's it now. The compost bin is empty. The worm bin is completely empty, and all I've got in the middle to cover the hole from the lid. I've lost the lid of the IBC, and all I've got is just a rock that's covering it. It's good because it allows for drainage. I've also drilled some holes around the base of this, so it lets the water through and the juices through. That's my last wheelbarrow load of the rough stuff that I'm stacking up, and I'll sift that in a few months' time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to give the bottom a good clean and make sure, I'm just going to give it a good general cleaning. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest whatever juice is left at the bottom. Because it's been raining, I've had the tap open so it can all drain away because it's just filling up too much and I haven't got a cover on this. I do really need to get around to doing that, building some kind of cover over my composting bays, so it keeps it protected a bit more, and it allows me a bit more control over how I compost. It's something that hopefully I'll get around to doing this year. I've been sort of relying on the canopy of the big sycamore tree to protect the compost pile. It works on a couple of them, but it doesn't work on this worm bin because it's out the way. It might be an idea to shift it under the sycamore tree and protect it a bit more that way. But we'll see. It's one of those jobs for the year coming, and we'll see. The lid's been taken off. This is what you can see underneath. How I've got it propped up is just with some bricks. So I've got the top part propped up with just some bricks. And the good thing about this setup is this tap. It allows you to collect the worm juice. Now I've had it left open because it's raining. A lot of it is filling up with excess water, and you can see some of that stagnant water in here now. So I just want to drain that out now, but I don't want to waste it because this stuff's going to be it's going to be full of nutrition. It's the real concentrated stuff. Yeah, because of all the gunk that's in here, it'll stop the tap from closing properly. So what I'm trying to do is drain out as much water as I can, and then I'm going to sweep all that gunk out. I think the best thing to do will be take those bricks out and then scoop all the gunk out and then just give it a rinse. See, this absolutely stinks. It smells rank. But the thing that I'll shut that off. See, the reason that we're giving it this clean as well is because, see that dripping? When it's not clean, it doesn't seal properly. All that gunk gets in there and it doesn't quite seal 100%. It needs this clean a couple of times a year just to get that seal closing properly. So the dirt and gunk that's in there doesn't block it and cause us to lose the liquid when we need it the most. Yes, we don't need it right now because it's raining a lot and we're not really growing much. But if I store this over winter, next year I can add it and use it like a concentrate. One of the reasons that this is so black at the moment is because it's anaerobic, and that's why it stinks so much. It's absolutely rank. But because it's anaerobic, there's no oxygen in there. You can see that from the black colour. but it doesn't matter that it's anaerobic for the reason that I'm going to use it, because all I'm going to use it is it's concentrated with nutrients, and I'm going to just add it to water as I water the plants next year. So I'll save this and it'll just be part of my liquid feeds. So I've got the bricks back in place now, so I'm going to put the top back on and then start filling it again. So there's the top back on, and I'm going to just cover that hole again with, I've got a piece of wood, so I'm just going to put my big rock back on top of that, and then I'm going to start filling it up again. And as you know, with me, I can't fill up anything, I can't start any sort of compost pile without wood chips. So let's see. So I'm over by my wood chip pile, and I've got wood chips stored in a few different ways. So I've got the rough stuff that I'm not ready to use at the moment, because I've got plenty of wood chips on my beds, and I'll add them slowly as I need them. But what I did was I sorted the wood chips out into a sort of finer grade wood chip, and these have started to break down quite nicely. So this is what I'm going to start off my new worm bin with. So this was a lot more green material, and it started breaking down a lot nicer. And while we've had it, we've mixed in grass clippings and different little bits and bobs into here. I'm going to start my worm bin off with this. So this is going to be my first layer in my worm bin. So there we go, there's my wood chips, and we're just going to add that to the pile now. So that's about 3-4 inches of wood chips added to the bottom of the worm bin. And now I'm going to take all of my unused compost buckets, so the stuff that I sifted off at the start, and I'm going to just add that in, because that's full of worms now. So that's absolutely rammed full of worms, it's absolutely chocker full of worms. I'm just going to add them all back in one at a time. So you can see that full of worms. When there's these big lumps of rotting wood as well, that can go in and it'll break down. It'll take time, but it'll break down. See, this is the difference with me and a lot of what vermicomposters is. They'll go through a lot of processing before they start composting, you know, adding material to the compost pile. It's too much work to begin with, and I personally don't like that. I'd prefer to just leave it and let time do the work for me. So now we've got all the unbroken down stuff that I sifted off to begin with added back to the compost pile. And in my buckets that I used to store them, they're absolutely heaving with worms, so they're absolutely chock-a-block full of worms. So you can see all the worms just wriggling about on the top. That's how many worms are in here. So rather than going through that process where I'm physically washing them out and trying to get these worms out, top tip from Compost John, just leave the buckets turned upside down and the worms will do the work for you. They'll find their own way out. So yeah, every bucket, I'm just going to leave them stacked like this. Look at that. Absolutely full of worms, chock-a-block. So all these buckets that I use, I'm going to just leave them in here, let the worms crawl out, and then tomorrow I'll come and shift these buckets out of the way and I'll cover it up again. And there's the gunk that I harvested from the bottom. What I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to add it to another compost pile, because I don't want that to waste. I think that's really good stuff. So all in all, I don't think we've done a bad job. We've got 1-2 trays of unfinished compost and that massive bucket load, and we've got finished compost sifted off ready to use, those 2 trays and that big plant pot full. So that's not bad. I don't think that's bad at all. So what I'll do is I'll do a separate video that talks about the benefits of worm composting and why it's different to the conventional hot compost or the slow cold compost. I'll do that separately, so keep an eye out for that. I'm going to leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.